Hello and welcome in this video. I'm Marco, and today I'm going to show you how to make this lava land in Blender. As you can see, we can change the height and the distribution of the mountains with just 2 sliders. Let's jump right in and open Blender. Let's start by deleting everything. Open a shader editor area on the left. Add a sky texture in the world shader and set the contrast in the color management section to high. Add a plane object to the scene, scale it up by 1 kilometer, and edit the clipping so that we can see the whole plane. Create a new material in the shader editor and let's start creating our lava land. Start by adding an object coordinate node. Scale it down so later it'll be easier to set the scale of procedural textures. We add a Voronoi texture. This is the basic shape of the steep mountains, since Voronoi resembles their shape. We then multiply it by a value node that we are going to call height. Let's add a displacement node and connect our output to the height input. Connect the output to the displacement of the material output node. Increase the roughness of the principled node because rocks have a high roughness. Switch to the Modifiers tab and add a Subdivision Surface modifier. Enable Adaptive Subdivision, switch to the Materials tab, and change the displacement method to displacement only. Also, go set the dicing rate of the viewport to 2. This allows us to see more accurate results. Add a noise texture, which we are going to use to control the distribution of the mountains. If we now multiply it with the base shape of the mountains, we can control where we remove them. Add a value node and call it Remover. This will help us control the removal of the mountains just by using a single slider. For smaller hills, we now add a Voronoi texture. Invert it by subtracting it from 1. Use a maximum math node to add the hills without modifying the base shape. This will output the maximum value between the 2 inputs. Let's add more smaller rocks by using a Voronoi texture node. Switch it to distance to edge to get the rocky shapes. Now let's add even smaller rocks by using a Voronoi set to distance to edge and a noise texture that controls the amount of the smaller rocks. For the lava river, we now add a vector add node and use a noise texture to control the distortion. Set the texture dimensions to 2D. This allows for less calculations and it makes it so that the texture doesn't change with height. Now add a Voronoi texture and set its dimensions to 2D. Use the distortion for its input, and set it to distance to edge to get the rivers-like shape. Use a map range to increase the contrast. And multiply it with the rest of the map we created earlier. Now, for the color of the rocks, we just create a noise texture. Increase the contrast with a map range node and use it as factor for a mix color node. Set one color to dark gray and the other to a less dark gray. Connect the output to the principled node. Let's take our river's output and use a map range to define its boundaries. Add a Voronoi texture and set it to distance to edge. Add a noise texture and increase the distortion value. Let's use a map range to increase its contrast. Connect it and the river map to a minimum node. This will output what we can now use as a glowy melting lava. Multiply it by 3 and connect it to the strength of the emission input of the principled. Add a bump node and connect the mix node. This will give us small rocks when we connect it to the normal of principled. Now, to change the color of the lava rivers, let's add a map range and a blackbody node. The latter gives a color based on the temperature of a theoretical black body. Increase the minimum and maximum temperatures. And here we go. Now you have molten lava rivers in a rocky landscape. Thanks for following this video. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. See you in the next one. Have fun.